All right, we have some breaking news from the NFL where the Tennessee Titans have fired head coach Brian Callahan midway into his second season. So the Titans are off to a 1-5 start and really have struggled to get anything going on offense behind their number one pick, Cam Ward. Callahan finishes 4-19 in Tennessee after replacing Mike Vrabel, who happens to be returning to Nashville this weekend as the head coach of the surging Patriots. All right, let's welcome in our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, and our NFL analyst, Pete Prisco, here to talk about this breaking news, the Tennessee Titans firing Brian Callahan. So, Pete, I'll come to you first. Your initial reaction to this news and then also the timing of it all.
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, they've struggled over the course of his time there, and they try to get a quarterback and develop him, and he hasn't developed. I mean, Cam Ward has worse numbers in his first 6 starts than Will Levis did in his first 6 starts, if that's saying anything. So I think that had a lot to do with it. Also, you want to talk about timing. You know who they play this week? They play Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel comes to town as a team. His team is 4-2, and you look across and you say, okay, our team is really struggling, so why not make the decision now? Look, I'm a firm believer that nothing you do during the season will change things. I really don't believe that, other than getting ahead of the process.
It's obviously not a surprise considering the way this was going. If you had asked me who had the hottest seat in the NFL, it would be Brian Callahan, less than 2 years into his tenure with the Tennessee Titans. Consider the fact that this is probably the least talented team in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans. They're the worst team in the NFL. I understand that they have 1 victory. The New York Jets have 0. It was the luckiest win in the entire NFL. Multiple times the Arizona Cardinals should have won that game. Brian Callahan exits having given up his play calling duties, which was his entire calling card in getting the job to begin with, right? He was a non-play calling offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, the hot name a couple of years ago. Comes to Tennessee, and he's going to be both head coach and play caller. And what one source told me was that, we, the Tennessee Titans, needed a head coach more than we needed a play caller. And he had to learn how to be a head coach while on the job. That was probably, obviously in hindsight, a mistake. What they saw from the offense was regression, and it was regressing before Brian Callahan handed over play calling duties to quarterbacks coach Bo Hardegree. And important to note, he did not hand them over to the offensive coordinator Nick Holtz, someone he has known since high school. He instead gave it to the quarterbacks coach Rare, and it showed that his offensive coordinator was not prepared to call plays. And so a number of gaffes at the podium, some timeout issues, end of half situations, all of those things ultimately leading to Brian Callahan's departure in Tennessee.
And so, of course, we're thinking, hey, what does this mean for Cam Ward, the former number 1 overall pick? We were really holding on to Brian Callahan, what he was able to do with Joe Burrow. We were hoping some of that magic might come through. But, JJ, who do you think could be a good fit when we're considering Cam Ward and continuing the development of him at this next level?
Okay, so first of all, let's have first things first. They are now going to go the next 11 games with an interim head coach. I'm waiting on confirmation, but the odds-on favorite has been John Bones Fossil, the special teams coordinator of the Tennessee Titans, who previously, when Jeff Fisher was fired with the Rams, he became the interim head coach there. That would make some sense. Bo Hardegree, I would assume, would continue calling plays. Of course, he would be calling plays for a team that offensively is not scoring a whole lot of points, right? I say all that to say this actually could get worse for the Tennessee Titans offense, right? Because now your best offensive mind is no longer in the building in Brian Callahan. It wasn't working, but he's now out of the building. So it could get worse, and I would venture to say it will get worse. If you're talking about potential fits for when they get to the point where they are going to hire a head coach, you have to consider that President of Football Operations Chad Brinker spent a number of years cutting his teeth in Green Bay. Whether that means, and he did not overlap with defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. I don't know if he overlapped with Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator there. But both of those guys could be potential head coach candidates. And then also Mike Borgonzi, the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. He spent his entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs. He knows Matt Nagy quite well, the offensive coordinator there with Kansas City, a former head coach. What I can tell you is typically when you go with first-time, never-before-called plays as a head coach, you don't go with that the next time. So they're not looking for that heading into 2026.
Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, look, from my standpoint, I think you got to get off the play calling and get off the you got to go find a guy who can be a leader of men. I really believe that, and we see it all the time. These guys get jobs, and he's a play caller, and he can run an offense, and he can do this, and they get the job, and all of a sudden they're overwhelmed by it all. You got to find a head coach who can manage the whole thing. Now, if that also entails calling plays, that's fine. But it's hard to do, and it's hard to find the right guy. Look, Jeff Hafley's name has been mentioned as a guy if you're going to go to the defensive side of the ball, but I doubt that. I think they have to find somebody who's going to make that quarterback into what you think he can become when you drafted him first overall. So you got to find an offensive guy who can lead the room. That's hard to find. There aren't a lot of those guys out there. That's going to be a real challenge for them, but I definitely think you're going to look on the offensive side of the football.
And gentlemen, while we're talking about the hot seat, the head coaching hot seat conversation here in the NFL, Pete, do you think we see anybody else get fired before the end of the season? Who comes to mind?
Well, I think Mike McDaniel's an obvious one, but you hear stuff that maybe they won't make the move during the season. Again, I'll say this, and I've said it over and over again. I don't necessarily believe that firing a guy helps the cause. It really doesn't. What do you get out of it? I mean, is Bones Fossil going to take the Titans to the playoffs? No. Is he going to get the job after the season's over? No. So what does it do? It doesn't really do anything. So, but I do think if there's a candidate out there, Mike McDaniel is certainly on that hot seat, and I think you're going to. Not just him, but the general manager, Chris Greer, as well. I think Miami needs wholesale changes, and I do think they're coming.
So obviously, if you're talking about ranking who has the warmest seat remaining in the NFL, there's no doubt it's the Miami Dolphins, and it's at both head coach and general manager. When that takes place, after what loss, obviously you're going to be on high alert as the losses mount for the Miami Dolphins. And so, stay tuned to that. That is to be determined. Elsewhere, it's just going to depend on how the season plays out. With the New York Giants, for example, no one is talking about Brian Daboll's job security after they beat the defending Super Bowl champions on Thursday Night Football, right? But if you zoom out a little bit, you still say, well, yeah, his seat is still a little bit warm with the Giants, right? You can talk about the Cleveland Browns, perhaps, and Kevin Stefanski, and maybe even Andrew Berry, the general manager there. All of those things, you have to see how the season's going to play out. If coming into today, you had asked me what coach could ultimately be fired this week, Brian Callahan would have been at the top of that list, followed closely by Mike McDaniel at some point. And then after that, there's a wide gap. So that's really where things stand right now in the NFL.
JJP, we certainly appreciate it joining us for this breaking news here on HQ, where the Tennessee Titans have fired head coach Brian Callahan. Titans right now off to a 1-5 start to this season. So make sure you stay locked into here. CBS Sports HQ for game day recap. You can catch Pete, Damian, Haley, Rand. They're always recapping all the events and all the games from Sunday. Make sure you lock in Sundays, 8:20 Eastern time, right here on HQ. We have some breaking news from the NFL, where the Tennessee Titans have fired head coach Brian Callahan midway into his second season. The Titans are off to a 1-5 start and have struggled to get anything going on offense behind the number 1 pick Cam Ward. So Callahan, you see it there, finishes 4-19 in Tennessee after replacing Mike Vrabel, and you see the disparity there. And the win-loss, obviously the NFL ranks as well. Vrabel, of course, being the head coach of the Titans from 2018 to 2023. And Mike Vrabel, by the way, returning to Nashville this weekend as the head coach of the Patriots. And a reminder, you can watch that matchup on CBS. All right, let's welcome in our NFL analyst, NFL draft expert, Ryan Wilson. So, Ryan, I know on With the First Pick podcast, you guys always break down the rookies from the previous draft class and what you've seen. So when you're hearing all this, the Titans moving on from Brian Callahan, what does this mean in your eyes for Cam Ward, the former number 1 overall pick, moving forward?
Hey, Jackson, good to see you. Right, each and every week we go through every throw that these rookies make, and it was Cam Ward for the longest time. He's since been joined by Jackson Dart and Dylan Gabriel. But here's the thing. You can look at the box score and say, oh, my gosh, Cam Ward is truly and utterly terrible. When you watch his throws, one of the concerns coming out of Miami, Jacqueline, was this. He didn't play on time. It was a lot of hero ball, him trying to make plays out of structure. He has gotten a lot better at that through the first 6 weeks of the season. The results aren't there on the scoreboard or in the win-loss column. They did have that miraculous win last week against Arizona. But what you see is him getting to the top of his drop, him throwing the ball on time consistently. He has been sacked more than anyone on planet Earth over the first month and a half. So there are reasons for optimism with Cam Ward in particular. And when you look back at other recent rookie draft classes, Jacqueline, he's playing better than Caleb Williams did his rookie season. He's playing better than Drake May did his rookie season. Bryce Young also. You could say Jaden Daniels, who balled out last year as a rookie, and C.J. Stroud in 2023. Those are the two guys who really hit the ground running as rookies in their debut seasons. Cam Ward, while the results don't show it, the way he's playing is not far behind. He's calm in the pocket. He has a big arm. He throws with anticipation. He throws on time and accurately. There's just so many other things swirling around him that they have not been able to put it together. And don't get it twisted. He didn't play well on Sunday, and there's a reason that Brian Callahan was right to call him out with the way his body language was and some of the things that team did collectively. But as a whole, I've been impressed with how Cam Ward's played under some pretty trying circumstances.
So, Ryan, if you're kind of seeing that development and maybe the box score is not telling the whole story, who comes to mind for you as a potential candidate that could step in and continue that development here for a very young, very talented quarterback?
Yeah, Jacqueline, if I had the answer to that, I would be living on a beach somewhere, enjoying myself, because here's the story that you sort of tell yourself, right? Because, hey, Baker Mayfield was drafted first overall by the Browns. He stinks. Turns out he's an MVP candidate. Sam Darnold's a top 5 pick of the Jets. Now an MVP candidate in Seattle. Our guy Daniel Jones had to leave New York to land with Shane Steichen in Indianapolis for everything to come together. And I think the bigger picture story is this. You do have to be paired with the right play caller. And Liam Cohen parlayed his time together in Tampa with Baker into that head coaching job where he's trying to do the same thing with Trevor Lawrence and having some early success. But you also have to have players around you. We heard JJ and Pete talk about in the previous segment. There is no one to throw the ball to. Calvin Ridley left with a hamstring injury yesterday for Tennessee, and that took a below-average wide receiver room to a well below average unit. So, number one, you have to get rid of the sort of the Game of Thrones mentality in the front office and the coaching staff. You have to surround your franchise quarterback with players, and you have to have everyone with buy-in. And I think the Titans are one of the worst outfits in the league in terms of the things I just mentioned. They're doing all the wrong things really, really well, and they have to get that sorted out. So I couldn't even give you one name of someone, because in a vacuum, hey, man, bring Shane Steichen in if you could do that. That's not going to happen. But there's so many things that need to be fixed in Tennessee, and your franchise quarterback being one of the things to fix is literally at the bottom of the list. You got that one right with the first overall pick in Cam Ward. You have to sort everything else right to set him up for success, and that's going to be a multi-step process.
So, Ryan, when you're looking at it, like, hey, we got the quarterback, we did well there, the number 1 overall pick, but to your point, the surrounding pieces, who even knows where to start? So when you're considering that, how desirable is this job for candidates out there?
Well, if you have a franchise quarterback, that is a huge box checked when you're interviewing candidates, because one of the things that happens is you take a job and you're just like, yeah, I can fix the guy who's currently there, and the guy who's currently there can't be fixed, and then you're setting yourself up to fail. So, look, I would imagine there are people that probably maybe didn't have Cam Ward as a top 10 or top 15 pick who will be interviewed for this job. There's no doubt about it. He is a really good football player who you can build a team around. So in that sense, it is an attractive job. Then the question becomes, can you work with the ownership and the GM? And that's going to be an individual question based on who they end up interviewing. But I think if you have a quarterback, it goes such a long way in solving problems, because they've had some good draft picks on both sides of the ball in terms of the offensive and defensive line. They tried to get it right with the wide receivers this draft class, but you don't expect a rookie wide receiver to hit the ground running. But there are holes to be filled. There's salary cap that you can use to do that, but there's not much margin for error in terms of getting everything right. All that said, Jacqueline, and you've seen this as a Jacksonville Jaguars fan as well, things can change quickly. The 2022 Houston Texans were absolutely terrible. They drafted C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, and they became suddenly a playoff team. So if you get a few things right and you get the right coach in there, everything else can fall into place if you have your quarterback, and I think they do in Cam Ward.
Thank you for bringing up my Jacksonville Jaguars childhood fandom. And actually, Ryan, it segues nicely because we're thinking of some of these former number 1 pick quarterbacks in, a Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Cam Ward. These are a long list of number 1 overall picks to have their head coach be fired in their rookie season. And Ryan, of course, we're thinking like, okay, the #1 overall pick goes to the worst team. So it's like, should we be reading into this beyond that? Or is it just kind of, it is what it is because you're drafting #1 overall for a reason?
Yeah, no, I think you're partly right, Jacqueline. That's right. The best player goes to the worst team. Jeff Fisher, you could argue he got the raw end of the deal. He was mostly successful. But let's think about it this way. Jared Goff goes from Jeff Fisher to Sean McVay, Grand Slam, and now he's in Detroit, a double Grand Slam. Baker Mayfield went to Liam Cohen, and now he is the player he is in Tampa. Trevor now has Liam Cohen, who we just talked about. Bryce graduated from Frank Reich in a coaching staff that, frankly, was in disarray to what they have in Dave Canales. They appear to be turning the corner, and finally Caleb Williams. And Ben Johnson, the hottest coaching candidate in recent memory, is helping things turn around. You're seeing it incrementally in Chicago. So I think the takeaway for me is that there is hope if you get it right in Tennessee, and that's a big if, with the new head coach. Because as Pete noted a moment ago, everybody doesn't have to be a great play caller to be a head coach. Those are two different job titles. You have to be a leader of men. They had a guy named Mike Vrabel who they fired, but someone in that vein, Dan Campbell, Mike Vrabel, Mike Tomlin, those guys who get the most out of their players, I think that would be a step in the right direction for an organization that has struggled in recent years.
All right, so there is hope for Titans fans out there. That's what Ryan is saying. Ryan, we certainly appreciate it. Joining us here as we are breaking down what is next for the Titans as they move on without Brian Callahan, firing him as their head coach. And first up is Mike Vrabel and the Patriots, which, by the way, you can watch on CBS. You can hear more from Ryan and Rand Carthon on the With the First Pick podcast. As he mentioned, they're always watching the former rookies in the previous draft class on Sundays and breaking it all down. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.